welcome to the Village podcast. We're all about supporting families with neurodivergent children and anyone else wanting to know more. I'm Annabelle Radigan, and together with Anna Oxley-Rintle and Char Adorian, we're here to share the honest, funny and sometimes brutal truth about raising neurodivergent kids. We take a neuro-affirming approach to our conversations, but we're the first to acknowledge we are not experts, just regular folks doing our best. Our mission is to bring together a community of villagers to build broader understanding and empathy in the world around us, and most of all, to bring some love.
In the spirit of reconciliation, the village acknowledges the traditional custodians of country, here on the lands of the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation, as well as throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Hi, villagers, it's Anna here. Gosh, it's been a long time. I've missed connecting with everyone and spending time with Char and Bel, but we're back. Anyone who's still holding on, I'm really grateful if you're still connecting with us. It's been a year. I don't even know where to start, but we will unpack as we get back together and start talking. But I just wanted to do a quick intro for this conversation and also to let you know that we've changed our name. You may have noticed we've changed it just more simply to the Village podcast. And that has some to do with other work that we're doing in coaching and just trying to simplify our Takes a Village organisation. So it's still easy to find us. Unfortunately, there are lots of podcasts called The Village, but that's okay. You can still find us using the Village Lantern, and hopefully in time it's not so hard. So in this episode, we talk about transition to high school. We've talked about it before. Each of us, Bel, Char and I each have a 12-year-old who is embarking on the high school adventure. So we've talked about that. Obviously, for kids like ours, it's a really significant shift and can cause a lot of challenges, new challenges. But we have tried to at least be honest about our experience and also to share some experience. Bel and I have older kids, so we've shared a little bit about what we've learned, which we think is helpful, and hopefully it's helpful for you guys. And this time we recorded via Zoom. So we have a video recording of this conversation. Bel lives a little bit further away than Char and I do, so we thought this is a good way to be able to record more often and, chance for you to get to know us a little bit more and see our faces. So you can find that on YouTube if you search the Village Lantern podcast. It's probably easier to search that way. So I'm really happy to be back. I hope you guys are doing as well as you possibly can. We all understand that's our bar, as well as we can each day to the next. But we look forward to coming back to you more regularly. So hope you enjoy, and we'll be with you again soon. Bye. Well, I couldn't be happier to be back together. We're not quite physically together. We've got Bel.
Hello.
Bel lives on the other side of town, and Char and I live across the park.
Yeah.
And we want to try and connect more often. So we're trialing this new model. But you have to make sure, we have to promise that we have more face-to-faces as well.
I know, true. It feels like I'm in the room with you both, though.
It does.
Yeah.
And today we realised the topic that we wanted to talk about, which is transition to high school. We actually each have a child in grade 6.
Yep.
We've never really recognised that before.
That's so great.
Well, all three of us. Anna, it's our youngest, our last one.
Are you ready for this?
I'm so ready.
Yeah.
It's not the same, is it?
I'm so sick of primary school.
I just feel like I just don't have the same level of sentimentality anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just because I've been going through a seriously rough patch.
Yeah.
We'll get on to that in a bit, will we?
We can talk about that.
Yeah. But I think as well, I just want to, like, I know how hard the next year is going to be for all of our youngest, or all of our children, sorry.
The whole year, I think the beginning.
Pardon?
I think the whole year.
Yeah.
Oh.
I just want it to, like, I just want to start it. Like, it's like, I know the shit's coming. So I just want to get it happening. High school.
It scares me, having not had a child go through high school yet.
It's the bliss of the unknown.
The bliss of the unknown, but also the terror of the unknown.
Mm.
I'm a control freak a little bit, you know? Not being able to, you know, I feel like primary school is a controllable beast in its own kind of quaint, completely dysfunctional way. Primary school has managed to be small and cute and they get away with murder. And then high school, it's all changed, you know?
Yeah. My 16-year-old just said to me just before I, you know, logged in and started this episode with you, it was like, nobody tells you how many kids there are. Nobody tells you that.
So we're there at the high school.
Yeah, I never thought that was such a thing.
It's huge.
But for an autistic person, of course it is. It's like nobody tells you there are so many kids at high school, people with beards and, you know, also like 27 kids in the class. Yeah, I've written a list of things. That wasn't the thing that I thought that she was going to say.
One for me, that's been the biggest one for when we've been talking about it. But that's because my child has got a severe allergy to other people.
Yeah. Which one? So, I mean, sorry.
Oh, it's so true. The middle one, not the one going into 6. Well, there's other stuff there. I mean, yeah. But I think that what you said, Shar, about in some ways it's more manageable. It's also a little bit that when they're little, you can actually physically move them. You can physically control what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
And now you can't.
Yeah.
Like that's also a really big thing because you have to start to use negotiation skills and you have to start to change. And it's so hard.
Yeah.
Just pick them up and move them or shut the door or say, you're not going there. You can't.
Yeah.
I think that's even probably more daunting for a parents of neuro-spicy kids because, you know, they don't make great decisions anyway, you know, 11-year-olds. But you add in the neuro-spicy element and, you know, you've got the impulse control, you've got the lack of understanding about social cues. Maybe there's issues with, you know, peer conflict and not being able to resolve those. I mean, these are all things that all kids have issues with, but when it comes to neurodivergent kids, it's a whole nother level. And I think not being around for that or not being able to have to help kind of scaffold all that for my child is absolutely terrifying, you know. And I'm so used to being there all the time, so if a conversation is going a bit awry or a kid's getting a bit funny, you can just be like, oh, you didn't mean it, you know, let's try this, you know, just try and you're almost like cajoling them.
I was going to say something a bit cynical, but like you're also assuming that he's going to go to school.
I know. This is,
you know, like you're like, I won't be around. I'm like, well, if it's not going well, he's probably not going to go.
I know.
We had a lot of that.
It's absolute. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons I've gone back to work. So not
seriously at some point. Shar, what you were just saying about being able to coach in the moment, that's becoming really clear to me how important that is. And what we're now doing on that front is instead of once a week speech pathology, because that's in this abstract situation where you're sitting around the table talking about something, is training, getting the speech pathologist to train the support workers so that they can do live moment and they're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It's only very early days, but that's what they need in the moment, coaching, not, let me try and remember what happened when I was sitting at that table in my speech session, because certainly for my daughter, she doesn't transpose those ideas.
Do you know what's really interesting is my son, he's picked some really amazing neurotypical kids to be friends with who are really good at kind of plugging gaps in conversations, are really good at helping to steer if things are going a bit pear-shaped. And to be honest, I'm really just hoping that he meets some of those at high school, because they're the ones that are almost like little allies that can be that person when I'm not there. And, you know, he's a very social kid. He has loads of friends and he tends to pick really interesting thinkers as his mates and, you know, quite emotionally mature for their age. But most of them are about 2 years younger.
Yeah, right.
So part of me is like, oh, there's not going to be any younger cohorts that he can, nestle into.
I think that's a tricky thing, isn't it? Like my youngest as well is emotionally mature, but socially immature.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
so loves playing with the grade 4s and 5s at the moment.
I reckon that's one of the biggest things that is so disappointing about our model. Because, in the US, they have elementary school, middle school, high school, and middle school is 5, 6, 7, 8. And I think that is really clever. I mean, then again, you've got the year 5s who come in and they don't have the younger kids. So I guess you could still have that problem. But I feel like
so overwhelming.
year 7's been...
You're not going to see a beard in year 5.
Please, there's no beards.
There's no beards. No, and that like honestly, like that, because of the narrative in our house about the beards, that's what my youngest is the most scared of, is meeting kids with beards coming down the high school steps at you.
Do they keep them separate though? Because I was asking Woody before. I know that in some schools they kind of cordon off the year 7s a little bit.
Our school's tiny.
Right.
Like, when I say tiny, I mean there's 7 classes per year level, which is considered small for a government school. So it's like there's no room to cordon anyone off. It's in a city.
What's terrifying for us is that Woody's going from 40 kids in the school to 1,200 kids. And we're like, oh my God. And he's chosen that. Like, we've given him choices. I really wanted to send him to a high school that was 900. To me, that was a lot. And it was very progressive with mental health, and it's a really modern school. And he was like, nah, I want to go to the massive local high school. And I was like, but there won't be cheerleaders or things like that, because
he's American. He's obsessed with America.
He's obsessed with he's like, who's going to be the jocks? Who's going to be the sport? The geeks? And I'm like, it's not really going to be like that. I think people aren't going to start singing at lunch. They're not going to have that whole.
But the thing about a big school, and my niece goes to a really big school. I've spoken with Anna about this as well. Is that everyone will find a friend at a big school?
Yeah,
the downside. There's a lot of downsides as well, but. You have so much diversity.
To pick from.
Yeah, in terms of your brain and your interests and your background and everything. But finding your people takes a lot longer in a big school.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's right. That's right. And so you're probably right, Bel. It is a whole year of trying to work it out. The other thing about the big school is the amount of people and the noise and the transitions.
That's what 16-year-olds have.
Bathrooms. I mean, I can't even.
No one goes to the toilet. So the trick is, I don't know any neurodivergent people that go to the toilet because they hate the transition of having to go to the toilet. Everyone holds on. And then
meanwhile, my ADHD 16-year-old leaves constantly to go to the toilet. That's his break. He's like, I've got to go every class. When we have our parents.
Oh, yeah, mine leave, but they don't go.
Oh, no, he doesn't go. I see what you mean. Yeah, he just stands in there and regroups. I see what you mean. Yeah.
But actually going when there's people vaping and whatever in the toilets is not. Oh, sorry, that's public schools.
No, I think that's what my son is doing.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not limited. I think.
Yeah.
You don't get that in primary school. Kids vaping with beards in the toilet.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know. Well, my 12-year-old who's going to year 7, he is at a school that has a middle school model, so he's not changing schools. So for him, it's not such a big change. And a tiny little school that has 2 year 7 classes.
Oh my God.
So
What?
Yeah. And there were 2 year 6, and then after year 9 they go to a bigger campus. But in the early up until year 9, they're in this very small suite, almost like a community school vibe. So that side of it's really good for his anxiety, but it's absolutely limited in terms of friendship option.
I was going to say good for an anxious kid like him, but for maybe a kid like mine, my youngest, she would just destroy too many relationships.
Yeah.
With only having 40 people.
Totally.
There's potential for it just not gelling and not finding people because there's not enough.
And that's really that's so hard. And girls as well, different.
Yeah, they're so judgy and
so complicated.
I know. Well, maybe I was thinking, I know we've all had a brainstorm about this episode, but what I thought would be great is for Char to talk about, the worries and the journey that you've been on, and then for Anna and I to add to that, but also then share maybe what worked, and some positive things or things that parents that are listening are like, oh, if I'd known that, that would have made a difference. So, because I've written a bit of a list about that as well.
Okay, that's cool.
I love your list.
I love your list. I think the thing that was, you get to the point of now we need to pick a high school. And I think if you've been a parent of any kind of child with a disability or neurodivergence that needs extra paperwork and extra meetings and extra everything, the thought of doing a whole nother set of paperwork, transitions, meetings, and decisions about what's going to be right for them is overwhelming. And that's just from the parent's point of view, let alone the child. So, coming into this, it was like, oh my God, I need to make the right decision by them. And I need to study every single school and find the best. And I found that I just couldn't, it was all a big muddle of stress. Everything had positive and negatives. And actually, the back of my mind, it was like, he's just going to drop out of school anyway. Like, the statistics state that something crazy like 45% of kids who don't attend school are neurodivergent or something. I think 98% of the 45 that don't attend school are neurodivergent. It doesn't sit well with brains like our kids have. So part of me is like, okay, just let it go. Just go with the flow, because
and it doesn't have to be perfect.
No.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's quite freeing. I think it was maybe Anna who said it to me when my eldest was going into year 7, and we picked the local school as well, because it was like, I just can't imagine them traveling for 45 minutes to get to school. Is that if it doesn't work, I know it's another transition, but we've got other options.
Yeah.
And that's quite freeing as a parent.
What was a bit sad was that lots of people and lots of private schools particularly were implying that, if your child goes to a private school and they are disruptive or they don't fit in with that system, it's like a business, and that business will kind of reject that child because it's going to jeopardize their business model to have your child there. So
they're not just saying that. That's what they do.
Yeah, I've heard a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll accommodate your child, but up to a point. And then it's like, we have kids here whose parents are paying a lot of money. And so please don't let your kid come in and disrupt those lessons, because that could affect financial flow of money, right? It's a business. And so you go, oh, that's gross. It's hard enough. So I think for me, we're not going the private route. You get so much more support from a public system that has to support the kids in the area. There's more funding, there's more everything, but it's terrifying as well because, I think with private schools, you get probably better access to teachers. I don't know, teachers or principals at smaller schools.
Yeah, I'm always really passionate about generalizations or avoiding them, because I feel like, and this is just based on lots of, actual experience, but also just thinking about it carefully. Like the private schools would never say that, but I agree that there's an element of that. And the fact is that they don't have to, like the government.
They don't have to.
Do.
Yeah.
But having said that, I know that there are some private schools that do a great job. So I think we just want to, I think the thing that I learned is that I assumed that the private schools would provide more support.
That's what I was.
Assumption.
That's exactly what it is.
I think that's a dangerous one to make. However, I don't think you would close off anything, because it may be that at some point that would suit. So I'm just really
Let me clarify that. I agree, Anna, 100%. I suppose why I jumped in there as well was that they do not have to accept your kid at all.
Yeah.
And if your kid is disruptive, they can expel them.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean, is it's a business.
No,
so
100% true.
They accept neurodivergent kids, 100%. It's just more, if your kid's disruptive, see you later.
I want the ones who are going to ace maths or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Speaking of generalizations.
Speaking of that, no, but it's true. And look, having been and currently in the situation of having very severe behaviours, I can understand that decision. I actually can, because I don't think that it's reasonable to ask, in that example that we were making, whether it's government, public or private, my child's needs are so high that I don't think that I could be annoyed that they can't meet them, because the accommodations are so extreme and it is a risk to the other kids. It is. So, I think that starting at the local high school is a really good.
But then we expect government to be able to
that's
handle our kids.
But I can tell you what I've learned from not having done that. I think starting at the local high school is a really good place to start. Number one, because you don't know yet what they have already managed with other children and what accommodations they're willing to make and how open they are. And some of them are excellent and some of them not so much, like any group of service providers anywhere. But when you start at the local school, it can be a launching pad into other places. And sometimes it's harder to get into those other places if you haven't come through that route. So it's really boring, and I don't even think anyone would be interested in hearing about why that is, but it's a really good starting point, because the Department of Education have said we are responsible for meeting all children's needs, as much as we can, and so it's worth exploring what that is. And also to that point about it not being perfect. Well, I mean, nothing in our lives is perfect, so we can start from there. Yeah. But also everything that you do, you learn more about the child's needs, about the environments that suit, and you can't know until you try.
Yeah. I agree. I'm so passionate about government schools, and I do think that some are not good and others are incredible. So there is a huge range. But probably the best thing is they have seen it all before. Like, maybe not in the case with your child's behaviours, Anna, because it is unique, but it's I don't think I've had any conversation where I've been dragged into school about my kids' behaviour where they have just gone, this is just, outrageous. They're like, look, this is what's happened. This is the consequence of it. And, it's unfortunate. This is what we're going to do about it. It doesn't mean that you agree with them or that it's handled well, but that's what I love. They've seen so many kids, beards or not beards, that have done things, and that's, I suppose, that my kind of biggest advice as well would be that when you get your ILP and IEP set up, which I'm assuming, Shah, you've had a conversation, has the school called you about that?
Yeah,
great.
It's interesting though that in this country you have to be in the school setting for at least 6 months minimum before they can start applying for funding to give you any of the extra stuff you need, and I find that extraordinary. I mean, it's bad enough in England. We have this EHCP process where it's called an education healthcare plan, and you have to apply, and it's woefully underfunded, and it's like gold dust. And even if you did get a bit of funding, you would get maybe an aid in the classroom, but you'd share them, with everybody else. So, but moving here, I found the funding's better, but it's the new way of doing funding here is to wait for that child to be in the setting for at least 6 months. So you gather the evidence of what they need in that setting, which I understand.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It makes sense, but it's a bit crap. So, when Woody starts high school, they will be giving him all the accommodations that he needs without having the funding for it. So they'll just have to stretch. But that's great that they're going to do that. But the thing I know loads of parents have been saying this, is the accommodations we're asking for, like, pretty much breaks whenever he needs, any kind of sensory issues sorted, chance to like not do homework, like all these things, would actually benefit pretty much every kid. It could just be a bit more like that.
But what I will say about that, Shah, and is just because it's in those plans, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. And I don't mean that to be cynical, but just from my experience, it took me until year 8 to realise that, and same with both of my kids, to realise that I had to advocate until they could advocate for themselves. So at the start of each time they had a new teacher, so sometimes that was semester or year, I would write in Compass full group email, group message, and say, this is my child, they have an ILP or an IEP, and these are the things and these are the accommodations. Please read it. You know, this is the situation. They're triggered by this, whatever it is. I had to keep going back because the information's not passed on. They're not paid enough for that to happen.
It's not. They might say it's in some system, but,
but no one goes in.
Yeah.
And the latest thing that I had to do as well was with the ADHD side of things. I did a full kind of ADHD kind of coaching of the teachers. Like I went into the meeting and I was like, this is what needs to happen with my middle child, whatever. And we completely changed his IEP to reflect that, but it never got, like, it was updated, but it didn't get re-emailed. It was just in the system. So then when I figured that out, I then was like, okay, please read the updated thing. These are the key points from it. And like that advocacy needs to happen in a public system. And that's no one's fault. That just
in both systems, also in private.
Okay. Yeah. It's not, it's just things slip through. Like it's there. And once you highlight it, it's usually good. But you'll get some old school teacher who won't give a shit about what the accommodations are.
It's interesting with my youngest in prep. I've done a cheat sheet on her for her teacher, and when she started, it was just a piece of paper and it had, this is me, this is what triggers me, this is what PDA is, this is the demands that I have issues with, this is how to de-escalate me if I'm getting escalated. Really important thing. And it was so important that I printed it out, pretty much laminated it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to stick it on their desk.
And literally, they said it was so valuable that they even passed it on to every teacher that she went to meet. And they said, please, can you give us an updated one for next year for the new teacher? Because it is literally like you just glance at that sheet and go, right, actually, it's probably best not to tell her what to do right now. It's probably best to tell the person next to her what to do so she can see them do it. So she then does it rather than it being a good on herself. So things like that. And I think maybe I'm going to take some of that learnings and try and apply it to the high school as well. Like everything being in these compasses and weird fucking dark vaults of crap that everyone needs a password to get into. If I just fucking laminate some.
Well, do both. I mean, there's those people who like it. Yeah. But I think that is really key. And actually what I've found is we've had to go through a whole new phase of like OT assessment, speech assessment. And what comes from those reports, there's lots of really practical things in there. So in that All About Me document, you can pull out some of those recommendations. And that's the other thing, sharing those with the support workers as well. So everywhere the child goes, whether it's at school or at home or with therapists, everyone has the same knowledge. Yeah. So their experience is more consistent. I think that's really helpful for their own regulation.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But yeah,
it's really interesting. I think probably something to also talk about is the kind of build up to high school for families like us. Like I've been working on the high school transition for about 6 months and that involves support workers. You know, I briefed them. We need to get him more independent. So he needs to be away from home, or he needs to be able to work out if he's a bit lost. How do you get somewhere? He needs to start even tiny bit working out how to feed himself. You know, he's not able to really go off and make a sandwich or anything really, or even pack a bag. Like he's never been able to pack a bag, unpack a bag, or
those things are so small, but they're massive.
They're massive. But all my kids have regressed now. They don't do any of that.
Your kids were good, and
they were good like that.
Yeah. You were all like out with your bags on the bikes, and I was like, wow, they've all got lunch boxes.
No, nobody eats now, so there's no one eating, and nobody is doing anything for themselves. I'm like, these are the clothes you're wearing. 17-year-old. Anyway, but something, Shah, could you go into a bit more detail around, when you said a bit more independence? Obviously, there's the food side of things, but what is that? Yeah. What are you hoping for him to be able to do?
I think my biggest fear is kind of organization of things. So, you know, there's no understanding of looking after stuff or knowing where anything is or knowing what you want or even planning ahead or, you know, what day is it today? I need this. None of that. Like the other day, we had some ice cream. I said, can you go and put it back in the freezer? And that was chaos because the freezer, it didn't behave the way freezers are meant to behave, as in just close. So he just sort of slammed all this stuff in. It basically defrosted the entire freezer and all the ice cream went everywhere, like melted into the fridge.
Because he couldn't solve the problem in the moment.
He couldn't solve it at all. And I said, what happened there? And he said, well, it just wasn't doing the thing it's supposed to do, which was close. So I said, instead of
Does he have ADHD? That sounds like a executive function stuff, doesn't it?
He has a lot of, it's diagnosed ADHD, but it's all linked to processing information of like the step you need to take to get to the result you need. And if something, it's just fascinating when my youngest got her diagnosis and they explained, like, if you put in front of her, if you put a jigsaw and you remove one of the pieces, she just could not work out what to do. Instead of going, oh, I can't really finish the jigsaw because one piece is missing, it completely blew her mind that it couldn't be solved.
Okay, that's such a good point that I've just realised as well with school. This was another piece of advice that my 16-year-old said, is that I need step-by-step instructions. And I didn't know that about myself. I mean, you know that now. And so with maths in particular, and this is a kid who's brilliant at maths, but when it's taught in a way where the teacher's not prepared to do that or doesn't know that, then it's just like a disaster. So if you know that about your youngest, that's really powerful to know that if there's something missing, your child can't put those pieces together. But with that piece, they're like incredible, brilliant.
It should be. It sounds so easy when you describe it like that, but it's about working out what that is. And as I say, the child doesn't always know.
No, it took us till year 9 to work this out.
The thing that also gets me a bit annoyed is there's lots of parents of neurotypical kids who are like, oh, my kids are really disorganized too. It's like, no, you don't understand. Like, it's a total different level. There is like a real processing issue happening with these decisions that almost make them, like, sometimes it's like there's a toddler walking around the house. Like, he, in many ways, he's far more emotionally intelligent than many of his peers, really bright, switched on, knows so much, and yet definitely couldn't go and get like a drink of something out of the fridge and be able to put the lid back on and back in the fridge without causing like a flood of juice on like it.
Yeah. And that's the problem, because at school, and as we know, every year the expectations increase, but that sort of thing, schools and teachers take for granted. Come on now, you're in year 6, you should be able to do that. Yeah. And that there's shame then, and then there's more stress about it. And I think in that All About Me, the more that you can just build on that document that says, these are the things, maybe it's just a little visual, right? Different thing.
A little like social story or a what do you call them in your advertising world?
Oh, what, like a storyboard?
Storyboard. Yeah.
You're advertising well.
Yeah, well.
I had a real weird moment though when I was thinking about how much information I'm going to give them about him. And I thought, isn't it really sad that he can't really just turn up and create the life that he wants there? It's like, not only do they know everything about him when he arrives, it's like, here's his past 3 years of reports. Here's all the behavioral issues he had in his last school. And where's his clean slate? Part of me's like, everyone else gets a clean slate and he gets this baggage, So it's a really fine line between making sure they know him like we do, like all the nuances that help him thrive and keep him happy and safe, but also letting him be his new version of himself in the high school, because it's a chance to reinvent himself away from this primary school that he hates.
Given that they've said to you, we have to wait 6 months, then that's your time.
Yeah.
Like, in some ways, let's all agree that in the next 6 months, we're going to get to know this child in this setting and work out what they need.
Yeah, no, totally.
What I would say as well, Shah, and you're the master at this because you have low expectations like we all do as well, is because he'll be trying so hard that just do everything for him for the first little bit. Like all those, the idea of packing his bag and the hope that you miraculously come into year 7 and you can do all these things. He'll be, even if he can, that's why I think my kids have regressed, because they've got so many other demands the rest of their life. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to make your breakfast, make your lunch, pack your bag, because they're trying to grapple with all the other things. And once I accepted that as a teenager, I know we accept it when they're little, but accepting that a teenager isn't doing that, it makes it easier.
Well, that was something we learned in the PDA kind of world, isn't it? That PDA autistic kids love because the demands of the morning is 25 demands just getting out of the house. So if you can put the shoes on for them, if you can brush, hand the toothbrush. I mean, not that there's any toothbrush happening in the morning in my house, but if you can put the jumper on them, if you can load up the bag, that is love. That's giving them hugs all along the way so that they go off to school not having 25 demands before they've even got there, So, yeah, we're very versed in that, and I feel maybe that's my fear as well. I all the other kids would have been spending a year, taking their packed lunch, putting it where it needs to go.
Oh, fuck it.
Fuck the other kids. I mean,
Fuck them.
No disrespect. Like, we absolutely, by the time you're in high school, there is no way that you can compare yourself to your kid. You just can't. It's so far away. I just
worry about him kind of trundling along behind, not knowing what the hell's going on.
But he will be, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like
acceptance. Like you guys were talking about acceptance of like doing those things, but this is my catchphrase, acceptance of all of it. Acceptance that our kids are not going to be finished learning by the time they're 18. So they're taking off that pressure that we've got to get to this place because year 12, it's all over. Absolutely not.
No, do you know what him actually? Because he's like, how many more years of this whole school shit have we got to do? And I said, well, you know what? As you go through school, you get to do more and more what you want, and you get to drop all the shit you don't. And I was like, so the longer you're in it, the less you do the shit that you hate. I was like, so if you can just get through the bit where they're forcing you to do all those subjects that you think are pointless, because he really struggles to understand why some subjects are being taught. And I get it. It's like if they were teaching stuff that's more day to day, like how to, save money, how to do a weekly shop or something.
Dollars and cents is a year 9 subject, which is about, money.
He would be like, why have you not told me that in year 6 and 7 when I really want to get some money?
True.
The thing is, though, right, what you're touching on is school, when we don't think about it too deeply, it's supposed to be where you go to learn, right? Our kids can't learn
at the school.
All the other stuff that's in the way, all the other people, all the other stimulus, all the other triggers. So I think in some ways the answer to that question of when is this all going to end is the school bit of having to do with other kids. That is really sucks and it's going to end. But the learning bit,
carries on.
That carries on. So you want to almost sort of disassociate the idea so that the children don't think, now I have to never have to learn anything again, because quite the contrary.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, like my preppy, she goes, I've got to get home and go back on the iPad so I can learn some more stuff. Because she's like, school is really annoying her. It's getting in the way of learning off the iPad. Yeah, get it.
Yeah. I mean, my one is also just don't make your kids go to school full time. That's what I say. But, because I think that...
it's too much, isn't it? But then this is the thing. I'm all for that because 5 days a week is too much. My kids have always said, shouldn't we go to school 2 days a week?
Well, or like 9
5 days
till 1,
One learning that I've had is because we have all of the support systems in place before we got into high school, which is brilliant, recommend for everyone else. We didn't lean on the wellbeing at high school enough. So when things went pear-shaped, my teenagers are not in the habit of tapping into wellbeing because we have our own psychologists and therapists and whatever. And I think that's a bit of a mistake of mine, is that I answer the phone, they ring all the time, they text me rather than going, go to sick bay, go to wellbeing. Like, I know that's not always possible, but that's a bit of a regret because now they're like, as if I do that.
Yeah, that's a good one, Bel, because that's the same example of what I was saying before about if you can get the people that are spending that like live time with them to be up to date on all of that stuff, then it's closer. You've just got more people across the same
How good
plan.
if they feel supported at school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do feel like that was just, I just didn't really, I just lent into it. I just was like, oh, great, fine, you can call me. And once COVID, that lifted, they had their phones with them before they didn't. And then it was like, I was just getting texts and calls all the time. And I should have just gone, you know what, wellbeing's amazing, where they have a psychologist, a therapist, 4 people in the team. Why don't you go and have a chat?
Bel, that's another topic for me, for us to talk about, like what we know now and what we wish we knew.
Yeah, what we wish, exactly.
Things like that.
Okay, next week.
Hopefully. But, well, look, we have got 3 delightful 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
Nearly 12 next week.
And nearly 12.
Yeah.
And it's an exciting time. I think that's probably what I want to finish on, is just I have to catch myself as well about just trying to remember to talk positively about things and with some balance, because some really exciting things about leaving primary school behind and lots of, things that you've maybe been ready for a while. So little note to myself and to us to remember that, we can plan for the things we know are going to be hard, but let's also really look out for and celebrate and be picking examples of things that have gone well.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. And maturity, as they mature, things do get a little bit easier. So
Yeah.
yay.
We love
Thank you next time.
So good to be back.
Bye.